Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I have a very special guest with me, Bryan Bishop, who is the CTO at Avanti Bank and as well as a well known Bitcoin developer. Bryan, it's great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Bryan, you have a pretty extensive background. I mean, developing Bitcoin, you've worked at Ledger X. So I think folks would love to hear a bit more of the details about your background. Where are you from? How did you get into crypto, first discover Bitcoin, things along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is in software engineering. I've worked primarily on backend systems, done some front end engineering work, used to do smartphone app development work, a little bit of security work, all over the place. And yeah, I mean, I was at Ledger X. Ledger X was a startup, still around. It was the first CFTC regulated US Bitcoin options exchange and clearinghouse. And I was there from 2014 to 2018. They eventually did get approved and they launched. So that was pretty cool. Got to see both sides, on the Bitcoin side, but then also on a regulatory slash compliance side. So that was really interesting. But as for how I came across Bitcoin, so I was actually on the mailing list where Satoshi Nakamoto had published his announcement about Bitcoin.
Wow.
And this was on the peer-to-peer foundation mailing list. And at the time, I had commented in public, not on the mailing list, but somewhere else on an IRC channel, that wow, this doesn't make sense. There's no way you can have a financial revolution if your software only runs on Microsoft Windows. And so I ignored Bitcoin. It was like, this can't work. It's Windows only. And there's no way. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. Um, anyway, it turns out I was wrong. So here we are. It wasn't until about 2013 that I started looking into the details about Bitcoin and got involved in Bitcoin development and things like that.
Very cool. So, how long have you been working on the Bitcoin development part of things? After you discovered it and maybe got more into the weeds.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I immediately started on development. So, I mean, I was around 2013, 2014, getting pretty involved in development. And, for a while, I was also participating in like Bitcoin Core. I've kind of amassed a large collection of bookmarks, research articles, things like that. So people come to me for references once in a while. Often know some pretty obscure stuff, have that available. And then also, of course, the transcripts, which is what some people know me for. I have to type very quickly, and this comes in handy. I do transcripts at conferences and things like that, and all the Bitcoin Core developer meetings and so on.
Very cool. So, you recently proposed Bitcoin Vault. I remember reading a CoinDesk article about it. Can you tell us about that and what it entails?
Sure. So Bitcoin Vault is this interesting new system for storing Bitcoin. And the idea is that in addition to having cold storage or a hot wallet, there can also be an on-chain mechanism to help protect funds.
Hmm.
And one of the ways that funds are protected here is through a combination of relative time locks and pre-signed transactions. And so this concept is that you can set up the scheme ahead of time with relative time locks. However, if someone steals your private key that set up those relative time locks,
Mhm.
the adversary or thief can just steal by signing a transaction that does not include the time lock. With a vault, the idea is that you use pre-signed transactions with secure key deletion, where you set up the time locks and then you delete the key. So a thief has nothing to steal in order to reset the time locks. The other component of the idea is splitting your funds up into a number of different buckets. And each bucket has a different time lock configuration. And so one bucket becomes available at a time. There's a watchtower involved, and the watchtower can see if two buckets are available at the time. And that's really bad because an adversary just has to wait until you have all your money unlocked and then steals everything. But in the way that the system works, the idea is that the adversary only has a chance to steal one of the buckets. And then you find out, and then you send all of your other Bitcoin to cold storage. So yeah, I proposed that last year and just released a open source prototype for evaluation by other developers, seeking feedback and reviews and comments. It's definitely not something I would run in production right now, but it's definitely something that I'm just sharing out there in the world, trying to get feedback on.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and it's along the lines of scalability and growth of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So, on that note, we've seen a lot of talks about the Lightning Network, and I hold Bitcoin in my portfolio. I'm bullish on it, but folks are seeing it more now as a store of value, which is fine. But the day-to-day currency usage seems to be still a roadblock there. So, what's your thoughts on the scalability and the Lightning Network in improving that?
Yeah, I would characterize myself as a believer in the Lightning Network. I definitely think there's a lot of opportunities there to solve payments problems. But the interesting thing is that I haven't actually deeply engaged on Lightning for a few reasons. And one of them is that payments are definitely necessary and very useful and a good thing to have available. But it's not in particular the problem that I'm interested in solving. I'm sure some people are very interested in that. It just doesn't happen to be my interest. So, so I've largely stayed out of Lightning development. I mean, I definitely try to follow along a little bit, but yeah, that's not. I wouldn't consider that my mission.
Got it. Um, and do you see any other possible scalability solutions that may help Bitcoin, or do you think right now it's just the Lightning Network, and like you said, it's not really your forte, but maybe something else that could be coming along in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some software upgrades being proposed. A number of them. I actually won't talk about the popular ones, but a less popular one at the moment is BIP 119 check template verify
Hmm.
by Jeremy Rubin, which is an interesting idea for providing covenants on chain. And this can help with things like congestion control
Hmm.
to help exchanges, for example, do batch withdrawals during times of congestion on the Bitcoin network.
Got it. And you said that's something you and someone else is working on?
No, I actually, so I'm not working on it in particular, but I did actually, so I attended a workshop that Jeremy put on, and there's extensive notes available online for the whole days of the workshop, word for word notes. But I also did an implementation inside of my Vault prototype using BIP 119 just to see how it works, and so that I can provide feedback to the community. But other than that, I'm not really engaged on BIP 119.
Got it. So let's segue into Avanti Bank, which I'm very interested about. I've interviewed Caitlin Long a couple times on my channel, and I was surprised to see that she started it up. I didn't really know she was out there trying to start something, but nevertheless exciting. So tell us about Avanti Bank. What are the services you provide? What's the mission, the goals of the company?
Oh, Avanti is really simple. The idea is that we are a digital asset bank, or at least we will be. We're applying for a charter. We're hoping to open early 2021. And yeah, I mean, it's both US dollar banking on one side and then digital asset and custodial services on the other side.
And I'm assuming the Wyoming regulations are kind of the reason it's happening out there. I know Wyoming has been pro blockchain crypto. I know Caitlin's been beating the drum out there. So is that kind of around the reason
Yeah,
why?
absolutely.
Yeah,
So Caitlin has been involved in helping draft some of the regulations around this and helping to get some of the laws passed. Wyoming is the only state that has done this in an effort to attract business opportunities related to cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain, which is really cool. I'm glad to see that a state has done this. It's really interesting, actually. Just digging into the regulations, it gets very specific about Bitcoin details, and they obviously understood what they were talking about when they wrote this regulation. So it's really fascinating for me to go look through this stuff. No, I think what Wyoming is doing for Bitcoin is great.
awesome. So as far as the services, it sounds like you'll provide banking services for maybe institutional clients and custody for the digital assets as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's mainly custody and mainly institutional clients, which basically means that if you want to open an account, for now, that means you have to basically go through some sort of company structure, which could include opening up an LLC in Wyoming.
Got it. And aside from Wyoming, are you looking to other states like maybe New York? I know you have to get a bit license, but other states that may be crypto friendly to operate there as well.
I believe under the either the Wyoming regulations or through some other mechanism, there is a way to offer services to other states without opening branches, I believe.
Uh,
So there is an opportunity there. And as for evaluating other regulatory regimes such as BitLicense, I guess I don't really have a comment, but I think we're definitely going to be looking into that in the future.
got it. So that speaks to maybe the general crypto regulations here in the U.S. where we don't have much of it. There's not a lot of regulatory clarity. We've seen some businesses move overseas for the time being, and we've heard Steve Mnuchin say, "Hey, it's coming soon." What are your thoughts? And maybe if when the regulations do come, we don't know what they are going to be. how that might affect the crypto market. What do you think? Who might be the winners and the losers and that type of thing?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, in one sense, I kind of think we're already there. That's what
Mm,
Wyoming has done. We
sure.
it's set the mile marker. This is it. It's happening. It's happening in Wyoming. Now, as for broader regulation, I'm sure it will come. But I think that what regulators are going to be doing is they're going to be carefully watching what happens in Wyoming and how this
Mm,
unveils and unfolds. And I think from that, they'll take away some lessons and really figure out how they want to handle it in other states.
sure, that makes sense. Do you think they will come after Bitcoin in any way? There has been talks about okay the illegal activities, but you have fiat paper money that's used for illegal activities. It's not
Yeah,
really an
yeah.
excuse. But do you think they could do anything that could really slow Bitcoin down? I know the decentralized nature of the network, possibly not, but maybe.
Well, if they stop printing money, that could slow Bitcoin down. But that seems unlikely at the moment.
Oh yeah, it's QE infinity and beyond. Okay, yeah, because I think a lot of people are concerned about that. Could they go after Bitcoin? And we've heard things about going after stable coins and so forth, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's all sorts of possibilities, but at this point, I think there's just so many people invested in Bitcoin, and there's such a strong interest in not being left behind for financial innovation. But I think at the end of the day, Bitcoin isn't going to be completely banned or anything like that. I think it's here to stay.
Got it. Now, along the lines of Bitcoin, I saw an article on Nasdaq where you were mentioned as transcript and typing service. You mentioned it earlier, how fast you type. So can you tell us a bit about that? It sounds like you're providing that service now at Bitcoin conferences or whatever it may be.
Oh, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's a volunteer service. And like, look, if I'm sitting in a conference and I'm listening to a presentation, I'm going to take notes, and I just happen to take extremely detailed notes that are word for word. And so I publish those online. They're on my website. They've been doing this for about 10 years. In total, it's like over 600 presentations and over 1.5 million words. And
Wow.
so there's a huge amount of technical information from all sorts of obscure talks that you've probably never heard of. But someone has to be documenting that. And so, whenever I'm at a conference, that's what I do. Um, but yeah, I mean, now that I'm busy with Avanti, I am actually trying to figure out what to do with these transcripts and trying to figure out if someone else can manage maybe hiring people to go do that, either type or there's lots of audio transcription services and things like that. So yeah, just trying to figure that out at the moment, hoping to hand that off.
Well, maybe some of the viewers here who watch this video on my channel
Yeah.
or wherever else, or the podcast, can maybe definitely reach out if need to. And you're on Twitter. I'll put a link to your Twitter profile as well as your website in the description.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Also, we chatted about it. You have a patent pending. It's a DNA data storage patent. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So I also have this other hobby interest area, which is biotech.
Hmm.
And so one of the biotech projects I've been working on is a mechanism for DNA data storage. It's basically based around the concept that we're running out of places to put data. We're producing data more rapidly than we're creating data storage. So we're going to run out of data storage. It's going to be a problem. So anyway, DNA turns out to be a very abundant, very small, compact storage modality for data. So there's all sorts of products on the market right now for DNA data storage, but they all have their problems. It's slow to make DNA, although very cheap and fast to copy DNA. My DNA data storage patent pending method is based off of a common laboratory technique called polymerase chain reaction. Well, it's polymerase chain reaction, which works on linear DNA molecules, but my method works on circular DNA molecules. Anyway, the idea is to use these as templates, and you interfere with the process of copying the template, and you can store data that way. And there's all sorts of data encoding that goes into that. But yeah, biotech is just something that I'm really interested in, and it's kind of what I go back to when I get bored of Bitcoin, if that's even possible.
So, kind of a one-off weird question here from the left field, but we've seen some news or developments around chips and encrypted with crypto payments and all kinds of things, biochips and things like that. Any thoughts around that and maybe how that dovetails with what
Well,
you're doing.
I get a similar question often, like,
Yeah.
oh, DNA data storage. What about storing private keys in DNA,
Yeah.
right? And honestly, you could. I don't particularly see the value. There's all sorts of other ways to do private key storage. In fact, I was working with Christopher Allen at Blockchain Commons on a project called smartcustody.com. And smartcustody.com has this booklet for people to go in and figure out, how do I store my private keys? I'll give you a hint. It's not DNA. Like, there's other processes available and stuff that people should be doing. So, yeah.
Got it. So finally, I wanted to ask, what's your outlook on the crypto market? We have to get out of this pandemic situation, get back to some normal life. But where do you see the market in 2 to 3 years?
The crypto market, interesting question. I always thought that we'd have a significantly longer time after the 2017 high to get back to somewhere substantial, and like, by substantial amount of time, I meant like a few years, and I don't think we had that. So the market hasn't really been something that I've had a handle on, really, because I really did think there would be this long period, and it seems like we just chewed right through it. So, I'm looking forward to the halvening. I'm very curious to see what will happen after the halvening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are waiting in anticipation. I'm also curious too, because yes, we are in a recession, but also a pandemic on top of that, and I don't know how that will affect people getting into the market and speculation and all of that. Obviously, historically, after the halving, it doesn't trigger a bull run right away, but it does happen in the months and years after. So I'm also curious about that. One final question. I know I lied. I said this was the final question, but curious enough, I've seen a kind of a doubling down on Bitcoin mining, even though the block rewards are being cut in half.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
here's the thing. The Bitcoin miners have always been extremely bullish on Bitcoin. Like, they have invested a tremendous amount of resources to mine Bitcoin and get as much Bitcoin as possible, even when it was unprofitable to do so. A lot of the Bitcoin miners are just extremely strong believers in Bitcoin.
Got it. So you think, like, for example, I interviewed CZ, Binance CEO. They're starting a Bitcoin mining pool, and,
Oh, yeah.
and I see in Texas they're building where you're located, Windstone, if I'm not mistaken, in Rockdale, Texas, building something out there. So something's going on. I don't know if they're
Yeah,
betting on the
one
long
of my
term.
favorite Texas Bitcoin mines is ran by this Texan who's a Texas secessionist. So he wants Bitcoin to succeed and become the state currency of a Texas not part of the union.
Wow. Yeah, so maybe they're playing the long term game too. Like, hey, they expect the price of Bitcoin to go higher, and we'll mine it and keep it around as the value goes up. I don't know.
No, I definitely believe a lot of Bitcoin miners are just very strong believers. Yeah.
Got it. Bryan, really great stuff. Anything else you want to share before we hop off here?
No, if you're interested in following along, you can find me on twitter.com/KANZURE.
Awesome. Guys, I'll put a link to Bryan's Twitter profile and website, so definitely check that out. Bryan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.